Okay, here we go. Our final session of Sefer Shoftim, the Book of Judges. If you open up your Tanakh to the beginning of chapter 19, which should be...
Skipping 17?
Yeah.
And 18.
Yeah, skipping 17 and 18. We're going to 19, which begins on page 560 of your edition. We are going to be learning the final story in the book, which is, along with the story we skipped right before it, very different than almost everything we've seen so far. And it begins and ends with a thematic statement. Vayhi bayim hahem u'melech ein b'Yisrael. In those days, there was no king in Israel. If you remember the beginning of the book, the first few stories didn't really compare the situation of Bnei Israel in the land at the time to anything else. It just said, this is what's happening. The people sin, they forget God, they start doing idolatry. God metaphorically steps back and lets enemies raid them or conquer them or harass them. They realize something's wrong, they return to God. Some kind of hero appears, fights off the enemies, and then for a few decades usually everything's good again. The people are good with God, they're good with each other, and the enemies aren't bothering them.
No unifying force.
Right, but no unifying force. And now at the end of the book, in the last few chapters, it's pointing out no unifying force. No king to rule over the people. All we've seen have been these local leaders, these judges, chieftains, warlords, or Shimshon, who seems more like a one-man army with his terror tactics against the Plishtim. But now it's telling us there was no king.
But there never had been a king, so it's just foreshadowing.
Exactly. Exactly, there never had been a king. Things have been going fine without a king so far, maybe. But here's the first hint that maybe things aren't as fine as they could have been. Maybe if we had a king, maybe the cycle would have been broken. Who knows? Let's see what happens in this last story without a king. Who would like to read?
It happened that there was a Levite man who dwelled in the foothills of Mount Ephraim. He married a concubine wife from Bethlehem of Judah. His concubine deserted him and left him for her father's house in Bethlehem of Judah, and she remained there for a period of 4 months. Then her husband rose up and went after her to cajole her to bring her back. His attendant was with him, as well as a pair of donkeys.
Okay, let's pause there. Thank you. So, who are our characters? So we have a Levite, and we have his concubine.
And her father.
And her father. Where is the Levite? Where is he coming from?
The foothills of Mount Ephraim.
Okay, so he's coming from the hills of Ephraim, someplace up here. And his concubine's hometown is? Bethlehem, and Yehudah down here.
Not so terribly far away.
Right, not so terribly far away, but on opposite sides of what we now think of as the middle of the country, of Jerusalem.
Continue.
And at a certain point, she didn't like him anymore, or something happened. She goes back to her father for 4 months. He wants to get her back. What happens when he tries to get her back?
She brought him into her father's house. The father of the girl saw him and greeted him gladly. His father-in-law, the father of the girl, detained him, and he stayed with him for 3 days. They ate and drank and lodged there. It happened on the 4th day that they arose early in the morning, and he rose to leave, but the father of the girl said to his son-in-law, "Sustain yourself with some bread and go afterwards." So they both sat and ate together and drank. The father of the girl then said to the man, "Please agree to stay overnight so that your heart will be at ease." The man rose up to leave, but his father-in-law pressed him, and he spent the night there once again. He arose early in the morning on the 5th day to go, but the father of the girl said, "Sustain yourself now and wait until the afternoon." So the two of them ate. Starts to sound like Lavan. So when the man rose up to go, he and his concubine and his attendant, his father-in-law, the father of the girl, said to him, "See, now the sun is waning, it's about to set, please stay overnight. Behold, it's the time of day to set up camp. Spend the night here so that your heart will be at ease, and tomorrow you can arise early for your journey and go to your tent."
Sound familiar to anyone else? It's like, oh, it's time to go. Oh, wait. Let's just hang out a little bit more. Let's keep talking. Let's keep eating. Oh, wait, now I really have to go. Oh, no, just stick around a little bit longer. It's fairly typical. Huh?
Somebody was whispering Lavan.
You said Lavan?
I said Lavan.
Okay, what about Lavan?
I don't know, he didn't want Joseph to leave, Jacob to leave,
Okay,
with his daughter and both daughters and his maid servants
And his stuff.
and the goats and everything else.
Right, but why did Lavan not want to give all that up?
He wants to stay in control.
Okay, he wanted to stay in control. He felt that everything that Jacob had belonged to him, really. Here, it's his son-in-law from out of town. He doesn't really owe him anything, but seems to want to keep him around.
I'm seeing the state going through his head.
Oh, really? You think this is ominous?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I mean, nothing's happened so far. It's been, what, 5 days?
Wants to keep him for his daughter.
You know, they lull these people to sleep and then they poke them.
And there's no mention.
with vampires.
There's no mention of
Just
taking
can't
the
drink blood.
girl back with them either.
We're not vampires.
Well, just the
Oh.
last line did.
Yes.
Well, that's
In Pasuk 9, the man, the concubine, and the attendant started to leave.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Yeah, but the father-in-law seems to want to keep them there. He doesn't want to give them up. I guess they have a good relationship, because he's not storming out. The concubine is now back with her husband. The father-in-law seems to want both of them around.
Why do we keep referring to her as the concubine if she's now married, right?
Oh, because it's a concubine-type marriage. She's a pilegesh, which means
So they're
at
not
least
married.
they are married. At least in terms of halacha, as we saw it develop in later periods of Jewish history, a pilegesh is a woman who is married to a man, and it is a recognized form of marriage, but it does not have the full status of kiddushin of a typical Jewish marriage, and there's no ketubah, meaning that there's no sort of
She doesn't have any insurance.
insurance or protection for her if the marriage ends.
So they live together by mutual consent,
Yeah.
but that's it.
Yes.
Why?
But it's
Common law
recognized
marriage.
as a form of marriage.
Right,
Yeah, you can
well,
call it a common law marriage.
Yeah, two people agree to that they're married. They're married.
What differentiates? In other words, why would Judaism allow more than one type of marriage?
I don't know
common law
why, but it may be that some people, for whatever reason, would be willing to enter into marriage if they feel maybe they don't need the extra protection that the ketubah is, because the ketubah basically means that if the marriage comes apart, either through death or divorce, then the woman gets money to support her.
Right.
So
She would-
if she doesn't need it, maybe she doesn't care about it. Or maybe if they want a marriage which is more easily dissolved.
Yeah, but you're describing it like she has less respect also.
I don't.
So I think that is also, that's also typical when we've seen concubines in Tanakh, that they're not as respected as full wives.
They increase their status with death.
So we don't know the background of this couple, of why they went into this particular relationship.
Does it have something to do with inheritance to the
Well, if
children?
there's no ketubah, how can they need that?
Are there any
Because the son of a
from that
concubine
time?
doesn't come before the son of a married.
So we don't even know.
I'm not
that.
sure.
But the
No,
question
he's
is, do they
saying
need
there
to
I don't know
get
about that part of it. I'm not sure. I don't. I'd have to check. I think it may. Yeah, I think it may not need to get, but I'll have to check.
And if they had relations with someone outside their status, would they be adulterers?
Yes.
So if the thing ended,
Yeah.
we're talking about a good note here.
Oh, okay.
So what happens? I know this is not important to the story.
Okay.
If the relationship ends, do they there's no ketubah, so do they get a get, or do they just?
I'm not sure, but I think possibly not. I think it might be able to get out of. I think it might end without a get. I need to check for sure, but I have a vague recollection of seeing people try and suggest bringing back Pilegesh type marriages as a way to prevent aguna situations when you have full kiddushin and you would need a get. But I don't remember for sure, so I would need to check specifically.
So do we know what ketubah encompassed at that?
No, that's why I said that the only understanding of sort of the legal status of Pilegesh that I have, or that anyone has, unless you're just going to look at the story here or other places the word Pilegesh is used, is based on later halacha, because we don't really have halachic records from this time. The earliest marriage contracts we have are from the Second Temple era. I think specifically from the Judean military colony in Yeb in southern Egypt, which is a whole fascinating historical thing about Jewish mercenaries and syncretistic religion and all kinds of interesting things going on there. But anyway.
Could Pilegesh have something to do with the fact that as a Levite, he wouldn't own property and wouldn't necessarily be able to afford?
Oh, possibly. Although the Levites had cities, so they didn't have sort of the wide swaths of land that a different tribe would have in their territory. But the Levites had cities scattered throughout the country.
They didn't have individual property within the cities, did they?
They could have. I think they could have owned like their house, or maybe a plot of land in the environs of the city. Although they did typically, sort of the societal expectation was that they would have less than your sort of typical Israelite farmer who has land, animal, all of that. So could be, very possible. Okay.
He had 3 donkeys in attendance, so.
All right. Okay, so the father-in-law doesn't want them to leave again, but the man refused to stay for the night. He decides 5 days is enough. Let's keep on going home.
I'm just curious, just a point. In the Hebrew, does it say his father-in-law, the gross father?
In which pasuk?
It's pasuk
9. Yeah. Chotno avi hanara.
Why describe him in 2 ways?
4 also.
Over and over they do that.
It could be stressing his relationship to both the man and the woman.
Okay.
Maybe to indicate that he has a positive relationship with both of them, possibly, or he's concerned about both of them. Okay. Who would like to continue? What happens when he doesn't want to stick around?
But the man refused to stay for the night. He set out and traveled as far as the vicinity of Jebus, that is Jerusalem. He had with him a pair of laden donkeys, and his concubine was with him. Since they were close to Jebus, and the day was very far spent, the attendant said to his master, "Let us turn aside to this town of the Jebusites and spend the night in it." But his master said to him, "We will not turn aside to a town of aliens who are not of Israel, but will continue to Gibeah." "Come," he said to his attendant, "let us approach one of those places and spend the night either in Gibeah or in Ramah." So they traveled on, and the sun set when they were near Gibeah of Benjamin.
Okay, thank you. So they start going. They get out on the road late. And they're passing Yevus, Yerushalayim. But who's living there?
Jebusites.
The Jebusites, the Canaanite people who the city was named after. The Yevusim.
And some people of Judah?
Possibly.
Is that what we learned
earlier on in the very beginning of the book? It talked about how the tribe of Judah conquered part of the city or infiltrated it or something.
They were cohabitating. They were all living there.
But this is one of the indications that this book might not be in chronological order. That it's arranged thematically by story and not in chronological order of this happened, then this happened. Because there's no mention of any Israelites living there. It's just a foreign city of these Yevusim. And they don't want to go there. Because they're foreigners, they're idolaters, they're Canaanites. Who knows what they would do? They're sketchy and scary and different. And they might try to sacrifice them. Who knows?
Xenophobia.
Xenophobia, who knows? Whether unearned or logical xenophobia. Either way, they don't want to spend the night in Yevus. So instead,
There were always Israelites living in Jerusalem before David came, because when David comes in to take over the city, they expected Israelites that are there to help them.
so according to one of the earlier stories in Shoftim, the tribe of Judah conquered or infiltrated part of the city. But the way it's presented here, it seems like that hasn't happened yet. Or maybe it has happened yet, and they're just saying, listen, it's not really an Israelite city, even if there are some Israelites living there. Those people are sketchy. Let's not stay there for the night. So instead they decide to go to Giv'ah of Binyamin. So if you look back on the original map, the Levi was from up here in the hills of Ephraim. The concubine, the Pilegesh, was from down here in Beit Lechem in Yehuda. They're heading back to his home, going north. They pass Yevus, Yerushalayim, on the border of Yehuda and Binyamin. They say, we don't want to stay there, or he says we don't want to stay there, and they keep on going into the tribal territory of Binyamin, just a short distance until they encounter the city of Giv'ah. Okay. So, they turned off there and went in to spend the night in Giv'ah. He went and sat down in the town square, but nobody took them indoors to spend the night. So they're waiting outside, waiting for someone to welcome them. In the evening, later on, an old man came along from his property in the fields outside the town. This man hailed from the hill country of Ephraim and resided at Giv'ah, where the townspeople were Benjaminites. So he's also a foreigner in a sense. He's from the Levi's home region, and he's living here in Giv'ah among the Benjaminites. He happened to see the wayfarer in the town square. "Where?" the old man inquired. "Are you going to, and where do you come from?" He replied, "We are traveling from Beit Lechem in Yehuda to the other end of the hill country of Ephraim. That is where I live. I made a journey to Beit Lechem of Yehuda, and now I am on my way to the house of the Lord.
House of the Lord.
And nobody has taken me indoors. We have both bruised straw and feed for our donkeys, and bread and wine for me and your handmaid, and for the attendant with your servants. We lack nothing." So we're all good for provisions. We have all the food we need, we have our donkeys, we have each other, but we just need a place to stay. "Rest easy," said the old man. "Let me take care of all your needs. Do not on any account spend the night in the square." And he took him into his house. He mixed fodder for the donkeys, then they bathed their feet and ate and drank. So they've been waiting in the town square for a while. No one's invited them home. No one seems to care about them. And then this one dude, who isn't even from there, says, "Don't stay here. Come back with me. I'll take care of you."
Sounds a whole lot like Stone.
Well, what happens next in Sodom
They get erased.
before Sodom gets erased?
Lot offers his daughter.
And why does Lot offer his daughter?
Because the townspeople are trying to break his door down.
In lieu of guys.
Because the townspeople are trying to break the door down and rape the visitors. So, who wants to continue reading what happens in this story?
He mixed fodder for
So
the
22.
donkeys, 22.
Yeah, while they
were enjoying themselves, the men of the town, a depraved lot, had gathered about the house and were pounding on the door. They called to the aged owner of the house, "Bring out the man who has come into your house so that we can be intimate with him."
Now, if this was like a movie of the Tanakh, the musical theme that had been in the background during the story of Sodom would be brought back to sort of hint to you what's going on here, and heighten the ominousness of this encounter.
Things change.
Sodom. Okay, so yes.
Yeah. So this from this story.
Yeah, actually, I think probably from the story. Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing is that in rabbinic texts, Sodom is usually more representative of selfishness than of violations of sexual limits.
Bad cheating business practices.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so they want the visitor so that they can violate him.
Yeah.
What does the host do?
The owner of the house went out and said to them, "Please, my friends, do not commit such a wrong. Since this man has entered my house, do not perpetuate this outrage. Look, here is my virgin daughter and his concubine. Let me bring them out to you. Have your pleasure with them. Do what you like with them, but don't do that outrageous thing to this man."
Okay, let's pause here.
Is the virgin daughter and the concubine the same?
No, it's his
virgin daughter.
And the other guy's
concubine
wife.
is the other
Oh, I
guy's
thought
wife.
suddenly
You guys clearly
it turned
Yeah,
out
no, I
that
can
she
see- I
was
can-
his daughter.
Yeah.
Clearly homophobic.
which guy? Yeah.
Well
I mean, it's rape.
Rape and murder the woman. It's more natural.
Whoever's involved, right?
Yeah.
I guess that's a good point.
Here, take
I know, yeah.
They
This goes to show you what rights women had.
So
Henny Youngman, take my wife, please.
right. So let's flip back to Bereshit. Bereshit, Perek Yud Tet, also interestingly enough, chapter 19. In this edition of the Tanakh, it is on page... page 32, at the bottom of the page. So we saw this in the Parsha, in the weekly Torah reading, just a few weeks ago. The angels come to Abraham. One of them announces that Sarah is going to have a child, Yitzchak, and the other two head down to Sodom to punish it for being a horrible place where people torture each other. And so the two angels arrived in Sodom in the evening as Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he rose to greet them, and bowing low with his face to the ground, he said, "Please, my lords, turn aside to your servant's house to spend the night, and bathe your feet. Then you may be on your way early." But they said, "No, we will spend the night in the square." But he urged them strongly, so they turned his way and entered his house. Just like this guy. Don't spend the night in the public square. come home with me.
Yeah, but they're
But the night of
angels.
strangers.
Right, they're angels, but Lot doesn't know that.
Yeah. They got blasters.
Right. He prepared a feast for them and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. Okay. They had not yet lain down when the townspeople, the men of Sodom, young and old, all the people to the last man. Did we see that here? Was it the entire town?
The bad guys.
So
People of
Men of the
the
town.
people of the city.
The men of the
yeah,
town.
so here it says the people of the city, the men of the town, and it calls them B'nai V'liyaral, depraved, people without any moral restraint. But it doesn't say every single person, young and old. But it says the men of the town. So it's unclear. It could be everyone. It could be a significant number of them. And they shouted to Lot and said to him, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may be intimate with them." Same
story.
Same story. So Lot went out to them to the entrance, shut the door behind him, and said, "I beg you, my friends, do not commit such a wrong."
Same script.
Where's Burt Reynolds when you need
No,
him?
my brothers, please do not be wicked, since this man has come to my house. Do not do this disgusting thing.
Yeah. But instead, look, I have 2 daughters who have not known a man. Let me bring them out to you, and you may do them as you please. Do not do anything to these men, since they have come under the shelter of my roof. They don't like the fact that he's stopping them. They try to push their way in. The angels zap them with blindness. Everyone leaves. The town gets destroyed. ... Here,
It gets
here there's no angels.
really ugly.
Yeah, there's no angels to save the day. There's no 2 daughters. Instead, the host is offering his 1 daughter and his other guest.
Right.
But the men would not listen to him. So, would you like to read, or are you too horrified by the action here?
Where,
Pasuk 25. But the men would not listen to him.
Okay, so the man seized his concubine and pushed her out to them. They raped her and abused her all night long until morning, and they let her go when dawn broke. Toward the morning, the woman came back, and as it was growing light, she collapsed at the entrance of the man's house where her husband was.
Okay. Let's pause here. This is horrific.
Yeah.
This is really horrible.
Yeah.
It's an X-rated horror movie.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I mean, it's not describing anything in explicit detail, but it is. If you were to picture this, that's what it would look like.
Yeah,
But the
they made
daughter,
it pretty clear.
the daughter didn't go out.
Right. The daughter got out free. Nothing happened to her.
But the concubine.
But we're not even told anything about, like, he mentions that she exists,
Yeah.
but we're not told by the narration anything about her.
Yeah.
But everything happens to the concubine.
And if she weren't a concubine but a full-fledged wife, then it wouldn't have happened?
No idea.
Uh-huh.
No idea. We don't know enough about.
No, you mean
We don't know enough about this man and his personal morality, or how far he would go to save himself in different situations.
why does the woman always have to suffer?
I
I mean, because if you're implying that it was because of the man's behavior, not
Well, I
you.
mean,
But we do know she didn't volunteer.
I thought he was saying that maybe the man didn't care as much about her because she was
concubine.
only his concubine
Right.
and not his
so
full
the woman,
wife.
instead of him being given his just desserts, the woman gets.
Well, he did it to her.
in either case,
he's the
they're
one who
not
pushed her
justices,
out.
whether it was the man or
Right.
the woman.
Right.
He took his chattel and pushed her out into the street.
Right.
Yeah, but you notice,
These guys
not
are
only,
bad.
Right.
These guys
No
are
one
bad
can
guys.
notice-
Just told that she wasn't chattel, that she was his wife.
She's concubine.
But still, it's another definition. There was different definitions of marriage.
not only did he
It's not-
allow
it's-
that to happen to his wife,
It's not like a
but
shifcha.
his his.
It is a form of wife.
But the other man was willing to offer up his daughter.
Or was he? Yeah.
But she didn't go.
Yeah, he was willing.
Right, but I'm saying both of these men are willing to offer up these women instead of themselves.
The other guy's sleeping. The other guy doesn't even know what's going on yet.
Oh
The
no,
husband
he
doesn't
offered
know.
his daughter in that
No,
passage.
he's the only one. There's only one man that's offering daughters and wives.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't.
Right, so the host offered them,
Right.
It's not the guy,
and
not the
then
husband.
the husband pushed her out.
Oh.
He pushed her out.
Yeah.
The husband pushed her.
Yeah, he pushed her out.
I missed that.
The guy who went to the father-in-law to
Oh, I missed that.
get
Okay.
his chattel back and bring her back home
He
with him.
seized her and pushed her out. She didn't volunteer.
His personal concubine.
Oh, I missed that. Okay.
He's a.
Try not to scream.
You're right, Mark. I apologize.
Yeah, that's.
Although
but I'm just
actually,
saying.
it is sort of ambiguous because it just says ha'ish, the man.
Oh.
And so it says, Vayachazik ha'ish b'filach sho. The man grabbed his concubine. So the
Oh,
question
so-
is, which makes more sense? If his concubine refers to the man, or if it refers to the
His guest.
other man.
In line 24 it says,
Oh.
Yeah.
here, he's offering up, here are my virgin daughter and his concubine. She's
Right.
referred to continuously as his concubine. Chattel. She's his chattel.
But we don't know who he is.
Right. When
The
the,
guy who
when,
went to get the
But
concubine.
they were talking about this guy and his concubine from the beginning. Why would it suddenly switch to the guy that lives in Gibeah?
because that's the question is about where the action is and who's
Yeah,
doing
but
what. Because
why would-
he's the one who makes the
made the
first
offer.
offer.
Right.
And so it would make sense for it to switch back to the husband, but not necessarily.
Wouldn't he? Okay. Wouldn't he have said my concubine? No.
Yeah, I'm kind of liking that. It
Well,
was- it was
what he would say,
the
but
guy
this
who
is
had-
the narration. This is the third person narration of the story talking.
So here in my book it says, in the comments, the man, i.e. the Levite, grabbed his concubine. Although the mob had refused the elder's offer, once they saw the concubine, they forgot about the Levite and satisfied their lust with her.
Okay.
So I suspect that's Rashi.
Could be. Okay.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah. Well.
The way the woman gets.
Yep. Not a good situation to say the least.
The script of a Hollywood movie.
Yep.
That's how we sold books in those days.
Right ahead, it gets better. Or worse, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah. Okay. So she gets hurt and abused and used all night long. When the morning comes, she's collapsed at the entrance of the house.
Where her husband was.
Yeah. She found her way back. But she's not inside, she's outside.
All right. It's got
Didn't
to be
care.
from the end of the story. It's got to be the concubine of the guy from wherever he was originally from.
No, it's obviously the concubine. Yeah, it's obviously the concubine married to the Levite.
Yeah.
The host has no concubine that we know
Okay.
of. The only ambiguity was who's the man who pushes her out. Was it her husband or was it the host?
Other guy.
Well, as I read on, it's not as important.
So,
Well,
wait, but
Yeah.
okay. So does someone else want to?
his
Yeah,
concubine.
when her husband arose in the morning, he opened the doors of the house and went out to continue his journey. And there was the woman, his concubine, lying at the entrance of the house, with her hands on the threshold. "Get up," he said to her, "let us go." But there was no reply. So the men placed her on the donkey and set out for home.
Okay, let's pause there.
The men are.
Does he care?
Man.
Like, what's going on here?
No.
Sleeping.
Does he care? He's like, get up,
Yeah.
get up. Really?
Maybe that's why she left him in the first place.
Maybe.
He throws his property on the back of the donkey and off they go.
Maybe. Yeah, so, and then they get home. What happens when they get home?
When he came home, he picked up a knife and took hold of his concubine and cut her up limb by limb into 12 parts. He sent them throughout the territory of Israel, and everyone who saw it cried out. Never has such a thing happened or been seen from the day the Israelites came out of the land of Egypt to this day. Put your mind to this. Take counsel and decide.
Okay. So,
I don't get it.
Well, never has what happened, the rape or the guy cutting up his wife?
Both.
probably both, but I think he's sending her as a message to tell everyone, look what horrible thing happened when we were in Giv'ah.
Wow.
Look, it's horrible. They made me cut her up into pieces.
What is this?
But was she
Take
alive?
counsel and
No, she-
decide.
They don't say.
Wasn't she
They don't
dead?
say.
Oh.
She didn't respond at the doorstep, so he put her on.
Oh,
They didn't
good
say
point.
that he put
He
her
was
body
just
on.
mad. He
He
said,
put her
"Let's
on.
go," and
So
she
we don't
said
know if
no.
she was dead
This is
at that
ultimate
time,
wife
or
beating.
died on the way.
This is ultimate abused wife.
Yeah. He's just mad she wouldn't do what he
Very
said.
perceptive.
Yeah.
It's
you know,
where-
David
it's-
mentions- David
And
mentions
he-
we don't know if she's alive.
Right.
Right.
When she's
But he's a
at the doorstep.
Levite
When she's
Right.
at the doorstep, we
What's
don't
this?
Right.
with a dead body.
Well, he's not a Kohen.
Yeah.
He's just a Levite.
But he's good putting up meat.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
God, please.
So right. So this is another layer of horror here. It never explicitly says when she dies. Like all the details seemingly are meant to show us they hurt her so much that she's dead now, but it never actually says she dies. It just says she collapsed on the ground, she doesn't get up when he yells at her, he picks her up, and then he chops her up and sends her
In 12
all over the country.
12 pieces for the
12 tribes.
Well, but there are 13 tribes. But he doesn't send it to
Levites didn't have a fixed
to
location.
Obviously, you send
Benjamin.
it
Right,
like
yeah.
that.
You didn't have to send it to Levites.
Right.
because-
He sends it.
He doesn't.
Why
So
not
either he doesn't
Benjamin?
have to send it to the Levites because they're scattered, or he sends it to the Levites, but he doesn't send it to Benjamin
Can you picture
because
the
that's who did it.
Paul,
Can you picture the
obviously
clerk at
they
the
sent her
UPS
by
store?
FedEx.
Oh, jeez.
Like,
Oh, God.
so there's a
Becky's gonna
scene later on in
God did me on that one.
in I think it's in Shmuel where a similar thing happens, except it's a cow or an ox that gets cut up as a message to send to everyone. But this is a human being who
Yeah.
obviously left him for a reason,
Yeah.
and then he
Offers her up.
offers her, like, not just abandons her, actively pushes her out the door to be raped and hurt and abused.
And goes to sleep.
Yeah, and then he just goes to sleep. And then he doesn't
No,
care.
That's right. He goes to
He goes to
sleep.
sleep.
And then he doesn't care in the morning. He's just like, oh, get up. He doesn't take any notice of her experience, her suffering, and then he just uses her as a message.
Oh,
He could
In these
care less.
days,
not a good guy.
how did the story start? There is no king.
So what is that? Could that metaphorically mean too that there is no God? I mean, not that there is no God. I mean, we know that there is a God, but that the people weren't with God,
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
right?
The people were not God. They didn't recognize
king. There is-
the
there is
the
no God.
rulership of God.
Yeah. Well, where does morality, ultimately come from? You
Right.
know? Otherwise, it's just an opinion.
And
Oh, that's
there's
good one.
a term that's been used for the sort of the societal structure of the Book of Shoftim, where it's called theocratic anarchy, where there's no centralized or stable or official government. Really,
That makes more
officially, God is in charge.
Makes more sense.
And whenever there's trouble, whenever you need a leader, oh look, there's a leader. Thank God. And it seems to work, sort of. This whole cycle, it ends good for a time, then it goes down, then it gets better again, then it goes... But at this point, it doesn't seem to be working at all. Things are so bad that even personal relationships like this are becoming horror movies.
the more I'm thinking about it, the story wasn't making sense to me at all up until the point where I thought about there is no king means there is no God, because there's absolutely no morality at all in the story at all. Morality, especially by the standards of our law.
Right.
I mean, there's none. That's the point. I think that's the point of the story, is to show how void we can get and how deep into the rabbit hole we can get with lack of morality, and when there is not a standard of morality.
So even God isn't king here.
There's right.
Even God.
So there's no standard of morality. It's the ultimate of secularism. It's like the ultimate. Just the morality is an opinion. So if you decide that it's moral to rape and murder, that's your opinion, because there's no other authority.
Secularism is the issue here.
There's no other. Well, it is.
No, because
barbarism.
you could have
whatever you want to call it.
Barbarism.
You could
Not
have a
whatever you want to call it.
secular state with the morality
Based on what?
based on human rights.
Based on what?
The value of men
Based on what?
and women.
Ultimately, based on what?
You
Sorry.
need a leader to establish that.
Based on
You
what?
need a
Right.
moral compass.
You need a moral source.
Right. Someone to stand up and say,
But all
this is
those
the law.
wars that they were fighting, they were supposed to be for the betterment of the Israelites, and they just murdered each other. So
Well, no,
I think there was a
And they're going to
barbarism.
again in a
But
minute.
a lot of them, God wanted them to. It was an instruction of God, because these people
So-
were evil and void of all morality. So He wanted, a lot of the stuff we read was that. It was God's directive.
Well, I don't think that was awfully moral.
Well, God doesn't like evil. God wants evil gone. God, right? Is that pretty
Nah,
much?
I don't agree with that, but we'll save that for another time.
You think God likes evil? Okay. All right.
It balances the world.
Okay.
Can't have good without evil.
I don't know if that's true.
There is philosophically a difference between the existence of or the potential for evil
God didn't
and
create evil.
actual instances of badness that need to be stopped.
Well, I think the parallel we see between this and Sodom
Right.
is where we get the message, right? Sodom was so evil that God destroyed it,
Right.
And now we're here right back again.
Again, the same thing. Just
Right.
complete
Right.
of morality by God's standards.
If nothing else, it points out how
we couldn't have a choice.
bad of a time it
Our
was.
choice wouldn't have a value.
How bad is it now with ISIS and all that goes on? There's no
Well, yeah.
difference.
Yeah, that's true.
You got it right.
So
His whole
let's
point of going to that town was that it was a Jewish town.
What was the question? What did you say?
Exactly.
So these are Jews. Sodom weren't Jews.
Right, Sodom were Canaanites.
So this is worse.
And this guy specifically said, let's not stop in Yavuz because they're sketchy, foreign, Canaanite. We can't trust them. Let's go to Giv'ah because they're Bnei Israel. They're like us. And then this is what happens. And this is what he does as part of it. And now he's trying to
is there a
enrage
chance-
the whole
Is there a
country.
chance it was a test? Him pushing his concubine out is some kind of test of how bad these people
No,
could be?
I think they were just totally void of.
I mean, either way, he's
moral compass.
using her in a very dangerous way.
Well, it
Right.
shows the value of women in biblical times to these people. But
Well, to these people,
Well, to
not
these
to other
people.
people.
Well, I don't
Also in biblical times.
Right.
I don't know, just because in our books we show some value, it doesn't mean in biblical times there was much value given.
Okay, I'm not talking about
What
sort of
Abraham did.
what we could figure out about sort of the general cultural tenor of the
thinking was
region.
related to it.
I'm just talking about
But that was before the law, too.
about what we have as examples in
Yeah,
Tanakh.
but Abraham was said to have obeyed all Jewish laws just because he was so, sharp. That he divined the laws from just the environment. That he recognized God, and from God he divined God's laws.
Abraham and Yitzchak both say that their wives are their sisters, basically
True.
offering them up to save their own lives.
Yeah, he
So that
thought.
was-
Yitzchak doesn't offer
Very
her.
flawed character.
That ends up happening with Avraham.
But the king has a dream.
Right.
Abimelech has a dream, and
he had
and
supposed to, yeah.
Right. The
And-
king, with Abraham, she gets taken.
Right.
It doesn't say that he
That's in
offered
that's in
her.
Egypt.
Yeah, it doesn't say that he offered her.
Oh, yeah, but he
With
figured they would get
Yitz-
taken in any case. But he said, "This is my sister," to save his own
Right.
skin.
Right.
But he supposed that these things would happen. He went in anyway.
Now, I'm reading this book about David, and
Okay.
granted that it's a totally secular book, and I don't know if all of it, I mean, obviously not all of it is derived from the
Okay.
Bible. But in the book, Amnon, one of his sons,
Yeah.
rapes his sister.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's like this.
That's in there.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
But he gets his.
yeah, he gets his.
Yeah.
But David can't stand it. I mean, and then he doesn't want his
It's
sons
his
to
beloved
die.
son. It's his oldest son. It's the one that's going to be king.
Yeah. David has a lot of conflicted feelings about his children.
Yeah, he's
Got
not a
a lot of
great
conflicted
parent.
feelings about a lot of things.
Yes. True.
Yeah.
Okay. But let's take our strong feelings
Yeah,
about this
I know.
Heavy story.
horrific incident and
It's a
see what
modern-
everyone else thinks about it
Yeah.
at the time.
Right.
Now that the husband has sent her out as a message.
UPS.
Okay. Who wants to read Parak 20?
Go ahead, Jeff.
The men of Israel took the field against the Benjaminites.
No, thereupon.
Thereupon,
Beginning of 20.
23. Oh. Thereupon.
563?
Yeah, thereupon, you got it.
There you
I
go.
was ahead.
You were
reading
way
ahead.
Thereupon all the Israelites from Dan to Beersheba and from the land of Gilead marched forward, and the community assembled to a man before the Lord at Mizpah. All the leaders of the people and all the tribes of Israel presented themselves in the assembly of God's people. 400,000 fighting men on foot. Benjaminites heard the Israelites had come up to Mizpah. The Israelites said, "Tell us, how did this evil thing happen?" And the Levite, the husband of the murdered woman, replied, "My concubine and I came to Gilboa in Benjamin to spend the night. The citizens of Gilboa sent out to harm me. They gathered against me around my house in the night. They meant to kill me, and they ravished my concubine until she died."
She's leaving out one thing. He's leaving out one thing.
Yeah.
Oh, what did he leave
They're
out?
outside.
And he offered her up.
Yep. Oh, and what's this? They meant to kill me.
Yeah, they weren't gonna kill
They
him.
weren't gonna kill him.
He was-
Maybe he felt that was
Well, they
equivalent to death,
They
but
killed her.
don't know that.
Well, yeah, we don't know exactly
They
how.
meant to do the same thing to him that they wound up doing to the concubine.
Right.
But he was
Right.
stronger
So
than
I-
the two
I think-
donkeys.
I think it's a reasonable claim.
Okay. Okay. Well, reasonable or not, it's not exactly how we've seen it from the narration.
It's his version of the truth.
Right. So okay. So let's continue.
So I took hold of my concubine and I cut her in pieces and sent them through every part of Israel's territory. For an outrageous act of depravity had been committed in Israel. Now you all Israelites produce a plan of action here and now.
Okay. So what's their plan of action? What do they decide?
Then all the people rose as one man and declared, "We will not go back to our homes, we will not enter our houses. But this is what we will do to Gilboa. We will wage war against it according to a lot. We will take from all the tribes of Israel 10 men to the 100, 100 to the 1,000, 1,000 to the 10,000, supply provisions for the troops, to prepare for the going to Gibeah and Benjamin, for the outrage it has committed in Israel." So all of the men of Israel united as one man, massed against the town. And the tribes of Israel sent men through the whole tribe of Benjamin, saying, "What is this evil thing that's happened among you? Come hand over those scoundrels in Gilboa, so that we may put them to death and stamp out the evil from Israel." Benjaminites would not yield to the demand of their fellow Israelites.
Okay. So what's
Who's
the?
speaking here? Who's the leader? Who's rallying the troops? Who's making these decisions?
who,
It doesn't
I
say.
don't know.
So they spoke
These are
as
the
one-
people. These are the people who are responding to the husband. They're united. It says
All the people,
they
as one might
act
say.
all together. So this could be a quote from an individual, or it could just be a sort of a constructed quote expressing the unified intent of the nation. So what's their plan?
Well, more important, what doesn't Benjamin like about the plan?
Well,
It was their people.
it was their people. They don't want to give up their town. It was their town. Giv'ah is part of the tribe of Binyamin. And when the other tribes come and say, hey, your people did something really bad, we're going to kill them, Binyamin says no.
Looks like Levite wants to be cake.
A bit of a troublemaker.
No.
He's not talking about political power here.
Eddie
He's talking
Haskell.
about revenge.
Right.
Yeah. And the Benjamites, if all the other towns were supposedly good,
Right.
and this was one evil town, you'd think they would say, you're right, these are really bad people, let's get rid of them. So it's a little curious.
But, I mean, we know that sometimes people's relationships are more important to them than justice. People hide things or protect their relatives and friends who deserve justice and punishment for various things all the time. We've seen all the tribes acting individually or in small groups before. We've seen them fight each other a little bit. But now, there's sort of the climax of the dissolution of the Israelite nation as a unified force, where everyone's uniting together to fight one of their own.
Little brother.
Yeah. Okay.
So the Benjaminites gathered from their towns to Gilgal in order to take the field against the Israelites. That day the Benjaminites mustered from the towns 26,000 fighting men, mustered apart from the inhabitants of Gilgal. 700 picked men. All of this force, 700 picked men, were left-handed.
Like who?
Yiftah.
No, Yiftach was not left-handed. Who was left-handed?
Gideon.
No. Who was left-handed and from the tribe of Binyamin?
What, David?
No, and he had the sword, the straight sword with the sharp on both sides,
Oh,
and he
that's the first
stabbed
guy.
the king. Not Gideon, before Gideon.
First guy. First.
He wasn't the first one. He was like the second or third. Ehud ben Gera. He was a lefty from Binyamin,
That was a long time ago.
and it turns out that there are a lot of warrior left-handed people from Binyamin.
But he was a good guy.
Yes, but he was a good guy. I mean, these guys might also be generally good guys, but they're picking the wronger side of this fight.
It kind of begs a question. Like these people were obviously bad people, and they didn't. So, but nobody. I mean, nobody paid attention to them until now.
Okay.
So, why now? Why is this horrific act such a tipping point for them?
Maybe because of the reaction. Maybe no one else. Maybe if anything like this happened before, the previous victims didn't survive.
Plus, this guy used mass media to publicize it. You know, he sent these body parts all over.
Internet.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, he did.
Right. He's getting them mad. He's spreading the news.
Okay.
It could be that the earlier ones, no one outside of Binyamin ever heard of it.
He's spreading the news, and he's the one
ever
who
thought about cutting up their spouse and sending it
did
to
it.
all
He's
his
the one who
brothers.
did it.
Yuck.
Yep.
Okay.
Like he's the only one, right?
Yeah.
Piece of meat came. How did they know what
He's-
they were looking at?
Okay.
Pretty
Let's
political
not
guy.
get too
I don't know.
too focused on that. Okay, so every one of them could sling a stone at a hair and not miss.
All left-handed.
Yep. The men of Israel, other than Benjamin, mustered 400,000 fighting men, warriors to a man. They proceeded to Bethel, and inquired of God. The Israelites asked, "Who of us shall advance first to fight the Benjaminites?" And the Lord replied, "Judah first."
So does this imply that the Lord is with the...
He's sanctioning this?
Seemingly so. Seemingly so. If you remember in the very beginning of Shoftim, there's another question, not who of us should go up and fight Binyamin, it's who of us should go and fight the remaining Canaanites and take possession of the land. And also there, the first one to go up is Yehuda.
Now, how do you deal with the numbers here?
That's a whole different question.
Oh, okay. Because there is no way that there were thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people living in that part of the world with that kind of technology that they had. And then dying 22,000 people in one battle. I mean, it's like,
Hard to wrap your head around the numbers.
well, it's not logical to me. And so I'm wondering what the rabbis say about
You mean it's
this.
not logical because it was not enough time from the time of the original?
If you
They
read
were
about-
living like, not even maybe Iron Age?
This is the beginning of the Iron Age.
If you
Yeah.
read about the Wars of the Roses, it's documented that tens of thousands of people would get killed in one battle. And that's just, it's another battle, it's just people with edges cutting people up. Like 10,000 people would die in one battle, in England. So it's possible that so many people could die. I'm having problems with 400,000. They took 1 to each 10, and so that means 4 million out of 4 million people.
40,000 actually went to fight, or went to get the,
Is it 400,000, then 40,000 went to fight, or
or
they had 4
40,000
million and
40,000 became
400,000
the
went to
commissary
fight?
corps.
Because there's a
40,000
big deal about they're
went to
taking 1 in
provisions.
10.
Yeah, but they were to find provisions, weren't they?
Yeah, 1 in 10 was to support the troops.
And you're saying if 400,000 were the troops that were actually fighting, then it was 4 million to start.
Well, maybe I got that wrong. Maybe it was 1 in 10 was dispatched to find provisions.
Okay,
Okay.
sounds more like
The
it.
numbers are interesting. Kathy.
I'm raising all the,
It was a good point.
Isn't it? I mean-
Where'd all these guys come from?
Yeah.
And if they were gone, how did they protect their women at home, in their homes? Anyway, that's not the point of the story, so let's see what happens.
yeah.
Okay. So who wants to read? Pasuk 20 now. The men of Israel took the field against the Benjaminites.
The men of Israel took the field against the Benjaminites. The men of Israel drew up in battle order against them at Giv'ah. But the Benjaminites issued from Giv'ah, and that day they struck down 22,000 men of Israel. Now the army, the men of Israel, rallied and again drew up in battle order at the same place as they had on the first day. For the Israelites had gone up and wept before the Lord until evening. They had inquired of the Lord, "Shall we again join battle with our kinsmen the Benjaminites?" And the Lord had replied, "March against them." The Israelites advanced against the Benjaminites on the second day, but the Benjaminites came out from Giv'ah against them on the second day and struck down 18,000 more of the Israelites, all of them fighting men. Then all the Israelites, all the army, went up and came to Bethel, and they sat there weeping before the Lord. They fasted that day until evening and presented burnt offerings and offerings of well-being to the Lord. The Israelites inquired of the Lord, for the ark of God's covenant was there in those days. And Pinchas, son of Eleazar, the same Pinchas, son of
Yep.
Aaron the
He's
priest,
now
minute before
340.
me. I know.
So this is another piece of evidence that maybe the story happens earlier chronologically than the end of the book where it's placed for thematic reasons. Or maybe he just lived a really, really long time, as
Doesn't look a day over.
those who were in my Eliyahu class might remember. The rabbis in the Gemara identify Pinchas and Eliyahu as the same person, which is like a whole other fascinating thing that he's living for hundreds and hundreds of years and still wandering around today, drinking a little sip of wine at everybody's seder. But if we're assuming sort of relatively normal human lifespans, it might make sense to assume that this story happened closer to the time of Yehoshua.
Okay, shall we take again the field against our kinsmen the Benjaminites, or shall we not? The Lord answered, "Go up, for tomorrow I will deliver them into your hands."
Okay, so
Who's he talking to specifically, do you know?
specific. It doesn't say.
All the
It's to the people, to the army.
So they're all listening, they're all hearing him?
Yeah, and notice how there's no recognized leader.
Yeah.
There's no leader. There is no king in Israel. There isn't even a shofet
There's not a prophet,
or a
right.
prophet or anything. There's just the Kohen Gadol with his Urim v'Tumim getting prophetic, oracular messages from God in some fashion.
What's Urim v'Tumim?
Urim v'Tumim are something that was part of the Kohen Gadol's breastplate. There are disagreements among the commentators what exactly it consisted of. One of the most common explanations is that the stones would light up, showing letters. And then the Kohen Gadol would have to piece together from the letters what the message was supposed to be.
Sounds like a stone.
iPhone 1. Yeah, that's what
But I heard that was
Yeah.
where the Mormons got their mistaken ideas about, they have these glasses or something, Joseph Smith.
Oh, I don't know anything about that. All I know is that Joseph Smith, according
that
to
they totally missed.
LDS beliefs, found or was given some kind of like golden plates with like scriptures written on them in upstate New York.
In a hat.
Only
you know
he
they
could
live-
read them.
And if you're driving around upstate New York, you may randomly happen upon, like, on the side of the road, this giant statue of it, if you just happen to be there. That's never happened to me, but it has happened to other people I know.
Didn't he live in Michigan, Beaver Island?
I don't know.
For a while, I was in Indiana, and then before going to Utah. Oh, and then Missouri before Utah.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't know anything about these glasses, but, I mean, it's possible that that could have been based on or inspired from this idea about the Urim v'Tumim. If there was something like that going on there.
He would light up.
It's like the 8-ball.
That's good. Well,
Yes.
shake it up.
Right.
I'm trying to,
Yeah, it's like
They're
it's like
all
it's like a
oracular
it's
stones.
like
I forgot
a
what they're called, with little symbols on them.
Runes.
runes. Oh,
Yeah.
How do you spell it?
R-U-N-E.
yeah. So all of these things are good sort of images of what type of information gathering device could be at work here, except that this is
Urim is
ours and believed to be coming from God.
Urim is light,
Yeah.
and Tumim is sound.
Tumim seems to come from the word complete or perfection. Tam.
Senses or
Huh?
sensory or
I don't think sensory.
With
a top.
The archives of the Vatican, we'll find out.
Yeah, I read a
Yeah.
doesn't that mean simple?
Yeah, but it means simple because it means like innocent.
yeah, I read a story. It said
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean simple as in dumb.
Because
That it-
you know the expression? It's a
Oh, that's with a
derogatory, terrible
that's with a tet, I think.
word. I thought it was
Which expression?
Tim Tam. It's a politically incorrect word relating to like the word retarded in English.
I think that no, I think it's Hebrew, and I think it might be written with a tet. I mean, there are some times that tam is used in a derogatory fashion, like simple in the like unintelligent sense, but the root meaning of it is simple in the terms of innocent, uncomplicated, or pure. Like tamim, tamimut.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah.
Okay, so they're talking to God. They get a battle plan. They got to war. They lose. They go back to God.
3 times.
They go back to war. They lose again. They go back to God. And now God says, "Yeah, don't worry. Tomorrow you'll win."
Third time's the charm.
I guess third time's a charm. But, I mean, maybe this is just goes to show more of the sort of the moral confusion going on in the people. Like, maybe they don't deserve it. Maybe they don't deserve it, and God says, "Listen, go for it, but yeah, sorry guys, you're not really that much better than they are."
everybody, killing everybody.
And every time they come back, and what do?
Offer and pray.
They offer, they pray, they cry. And so maybe eventually it kicks in.
Yeah.
The cycle comes around in some fashion, enough for God to say, okay, you're going to win now, don't worry.
Well, he's trying to make a direct correlation between praying and result. You know what I mean? But, assume that they were void of that up until they decided to fight, and then so the first battle they weren't, so they got a little closer, and now he says, now they're really praying, they're fervent, they're concentrated, and you go, okay, now I'm going to show you the direct correlation because your guys are so dense that you only can see that.
Okay. Could be. Okay. So, they go back to war. Pasuk 29, Israel put men in ambush against Giv'ah on all sides, and on the third day the Israelites went up against the Benjaminites as before and engaged them in battle at Giv'ah. The Benjaminites dashed out to meet the army and were drawn away from the town onto the roads, of which one runs to Beit El and the other to Giv'ah. As before, they started out by striking some of the men dead in the open field, about 30 men of Israel. So they're using some kind of strategy here where they're drawing them out with bait of some of their own soldiers away from the city down the roads. The Benjaminites thought they are being routed before us as previously. They think, oh, everything's going fine, just like before. But the Israelites had planned, we will take to flight and draw them away from the town to the roads. And while the main body of the Israelites had moved away from their positions and had drawn up in battle order at Baal Tamar, the Israelite ambush was rushing out from its position at Mar'eh Geva. Thus, 10,000 picked men of all Israel came to a point south of Giv'ah, and the battle was furious. Before they realized that disaster was approaching, the Lord routed the Benjaminites before Israel. That day the Israelites slew 25,100 men of Benjamin, all of them fighting men. Then the Benjaminites realized that they were routed. Now the Israelites had yielded ground to the Benjaminites, for they relied on the ambush which they had laid against Giv'ah. One ambush quickly deployed against Giv'ah, and the other ambush advanced and put the whole town to the sword. So they draw them out of the town. They fight with them on multiple fronts. They sneak around and attack the town directly. And now the other tribes seem to be winning.
But so they're not just fighting the evil people from Gibeah. They're fighting the whole Benjamin tribe.
Exactly, because the whole tribe of Benjamin is defending Givon. They said, no, we're not going to give them up.
Wow. Okay.
Big mistake.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, who wants to continue reading? Because the war is not over
A
yet.
time had been agreed upon by the Israelite men with those in ambush. When a huge column of smoke was sent up from the town, the Israelite men were to turn about in battle. Benjamin had begun striking dead about 30 Israelite men, and they thought, they are being routed before us as in the previous fighting. But when the column, the pillar of smoke, began to rise from the city, the Benjaminites looked behind them, and there was the whole town going up in smoke to the sky. And now the Israelites turned about, and the men of Benjamin were thrown into panic, for they realized that the disaster had overtaken them. They retreated before the men of Israel along the road to the wilderness, where the fighting caught up with them. Meanwhile, those from the towns were massacring them in it. Those from the towns? I have a question. Who's massacring who?
Yeah.
Probably
I
the
thought they-
other tribes are massacring the Benjaminite soldiers.
So it says that they retreated before the men of Israel on the road, and then the Israelites from the towns were massacring the Benjaminites in
Okay.
it. That's what I think it says.
They encircled the Benjaminites, pursued them, and trod them down from Menuha to a point opposite Gibeah on the east.
Their final move.
That day, 18,000 men of Benjamin fell, all of them brave men. They turned and fled to the wilderness, to the rock of Rimmon, But the Israelites picked off another 5,000 on the roads and continued in hot pursuit of them up to Gidom. They slew 2,000 more. Thus the total number of Benjaminites who fell that day came to 25,000 fighting men, all of them brave. But 600 men turned and fled to the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon. They remained at the rock of Rimmon 4 months. The men of Israel, meanwhile, turned back to the rest of the Benjaminites and put them to the sword. Towns, people, cattle, everything that remained. Finally, they set fire to all the towns that were left.
Blood and destruction.
Yeah, blood and destruction. True.
It's,
Total civil war.
it seems like overkill.
Yes.
Intertribal genocide.
Yes. And now the entire tribe of Benjamin consists of these 600 men off in the wilderness.
And probably
At
there aren't any
Rimmon.
women left because they've all been
Right.
smoked out.
Everyone else been smoted. This is really extreme.
Yeah,
This is extreme. This is really extreme. It's like every part of the story. Like, I don't know to say this is worse, that is worse, but the head count keeps rising.
So what's so spectacular about the Rock of Rimmon that it protects these 600 cowards?
I don't know if there's anything
pomegranate?
special about it, but that's the place that they retreated to.
Maybe it's got 613 seeds in the pomegranate.
Maybe.
They do all the mitzvot.
Maybe whenever anyone tries to attack them there, they get distracted by trying to count the seeds, and they never get to actually attack them.
So I wonder, and they killed everyone in the city, so not everyone in the city was a fighter. So I wonder why the Israelites just let these guys, gave them a pass. And they were just killing
No,
freaks.
They didn't give them a pass. I think they just escaped.
Yeah.
They didn't see them.
Yeah. I don't think they gave them a pass. Do you?
They probably didn't know about it until much later.
Well, there were probably caves and everything else up there for them to hide in.
Yeah.
And it would have been a real royal pain to get them out.
Yep.
And it all harkens back to when they entered Israel. What were they originally ordered to do? And
Right,
now they're
to get
wiping
rid
out
of
a
the
clan
Canaanites.
that mixed in and didn't follow the orders.
Interesting.
Well, yeah, except we just got finished saying that this may have been before they mixed in.
But they didn't wipe out all of the Canaanites. They were mixing, they were intermarrying.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't conquer their land as they were ordered to.
Although here, remember, the first irony in the beginning of the story is that they're like, oh, we can't go to the Canaanite city. That's sketchy.
Yeah.
So,
How bad would that have been?
yeah. Well, that's a question. Would it have been worse, or would it not have? Was this like so much worse than it could have ever been if they went there? So it actually keeps on going. The story keeps on going, and we have over 10 minutes to see what else happens, because it's not over yet. Perek Kaf Aleph, 21.
Now the men of Israel had taken an oath at Mitzpah. None of us will give his daughter in marriage to a Benjaminite. The people came to Bethel and sat there before God until evening. They wailed and wept bitterly, and they said, O Lord God of Israel, why has this happened in Israel? That one tribe must now be missing from Israel. Early the next day the people built an altar there, and they brought burnt offerings and offerings of well-being.
Okay, so what's the extra detail that we learn now? What did they decide when they were deciding, okay, let's go and kill everyone?
Like genocide.
Okay, genocide, but not just genocide of let's fight them, and if they don't want to give up Givah, then we'll kill all of them, but also whoever's left,
We won't marry them.
we won't marry. Right. We'll let them die out.
We're going to extinct the tribe of Benjamin.
Right. But now they're having second thought. They're like, wait a second, we can't do this.
Right.
They're us, they're one of our tribes. We can't, but what do? We all made this oath. sort of like Yiftach's oath with his daughter. So now,
So the Israelites asked, "Is there anyone from all the tribes of Israel who failed to come up to the assembly before the Lord?" For a solemn oath had been taken concerning anyone who did not go up to the Lord at Mizpah.
When was that?
this was when they first gathered together to make the plan to fight them. So now they're saying, okay, so we all took this oath that we weren't going to let anyone marry into Binyamin, but maybe someone didn't come to the meeting.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Maybe someone wasn't there and they didn't take the oath, and therefore they can go marry Binyamin and we won't lose a tribe. But the problem is, part of the oath was also, if someone doesn't come to join in, we're going to kill them too. So it's like catch-22 here.
Okay. Well, yeah, he shall be put to death. The Israelites now relented toward their kinsmen, the Benjaminites, and they said, "This day one tribe has been cut off from Israel. What can we do to provide wives for those who are left, seeing that we have sworn by the Lord not to give any of our daughters to them in marriage?" They inquired, "Is there anyone from the tribes of Israel who did not go up to the Lord at Mizpah?"
So who didn't join in?
Now, no one from
Yavesh Gilad.
Gilad had come to the camp, to the assembly. For when the roll of the troops was taken, not one of the inhabitants of Yavesh Gilad was present. So the assemblage dispatched 12,000 of the warriors, instructing them as follows: "Go and put the inhabitants of Yabesh Gilad to the sword, women and children included. This is what you are to do. Proscribe every man and every woman who has known a man carnally." They found among the inhabitants of Yabesh Gilad 400 maidens who had not known a man carnally. And they brought them to the camp at Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan.
Okay, so
How do you determine that?
well, there's a lot of there's actually discussion in the commentaries about how they determined it. Some of which I really don't understand what's being described. It has something to do with either body odors or the relation between body odors and other odors, where it says they would
Check the drawer
like-
for birth control pills.
no, they would that something like they would sit on wine barrels. I don't know what that's
scientific
supposed.
method.
What's going on there?
Maybe-
There are other commentators who say that the Urim V'Tumim were involved, and so they had some kind of miraculous, divine, magical kind of identifying tool.
Maybe they only took
Kathy's having
girls
a
9 or younger.
That could also work.
Talk
It
about
doesn't explain how.
morality here. Tell me.
So the saying like when you just have a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah.
It's like the only solution they have is killing people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the story just keeps on getting like more and more disturbing.
Yeah.
And then they sent out a bunch of women to be prostitutes to these men.
No,
Oh,
wives.
well, that's coming.
Right. So they kill most of the people in Yavesh Gilad because they didn't join in the war to kill everyone in Binyamin,
Right.
and then they take their young women to marry the remaining men from Binyamin.
So that they don't lose the tribe of Benjamin.
Right. They don't want to give up the tribe, so let's do all these things in order to make sure they survive. But there were not enough women for them to marry.
Well, because there were 600 men.
Right, there were 600 men and 400 women. So what do? They need to find more women. And they say, we can't do anything. If you look in the next Yitzukim, we can't do anything. We cannot give them any of our daughters as wives, since the Israelites had taken an oath. So they couldn't do it. So what did they say in Pasuk 19? The annual feast of the Lord is now being held at Shiloh. So in Shiloh, where the Mishkan, where the tabernacle is, there's going to be a religious festival sometime really soon. And so they tell the men of Binyamin, Go and lie in wait in the vineyards. As soon as you see the girls of Shiloh coming out to join the dances, the women who came to the festival, who are now celebrating and going out to dance in the vineyards, come out, and let each of you seize a wife from among the girls of Shiloh, and be off for the land of Benjamin.
This didn't happen to be in Tu B'Av or anything, did it?
Ah, yes. According to the rabbis, this was Tu B'Av.
Good call.
But
Couldn't be Yom
I was
Kippur?
thinking about that.
Explain Tu B'Av to the ones that don't understand.
Didn't they dance
Okay.
after in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
afternoons on Yom
Yeah.
Kippur?
Yes. Same as Tu B'Av.
Yeah, it's the happiest day of the year.
Yeah,
I
it
know,
doesn't
but
sound very
this doesn't
happy.
sound very
But
happy.
maybe in
So
those
the-
days, women didn't have any rights anyway, so
It started out really happy.
So the holy pilgrims that go to Shiloh get their daughters kidnapped to go off with these to the criminals
Yes.
that are left from Benjamin.
Yes.
Wonderful.
And the reason that the reason that they think it's a good thing is because they're focused on the goal of saving the tribe of Benjamin from destruction. And they're doing it in a very disturbing way. I'm sure there are ways to mitigate the wrongness of the story, possibly.
But they made
At
the
least in
vow
this
not
part.
to give wives.
And they made the vow
Now
to kill
they're-
if you didn't.
Now they're
participate.
allowing them to take wives.
Right. So that's how they get around it.
Legal loophole.
It would be nice if the women agree.
Overrated.
Issue back then. Was it
Well, it
ever?
was. I mean, it's very specific in the story of Rivka. When Abraham's servant goes
right,
to find
right,
Rivka,
yeah.
they specifically say, "We have to ask her. What does she want?" And she says, "Yes, I agree." So consent was a thing.
Okay.
Among some.
Right, among some.
I think Paul is exactly right, because just reading ahead, if you
Yeah.
read verse 25, and then it ends the same way it started. In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did as he pleased.
Ah, there you go.
So that's Paul's point right there.
Right.
It's an opinion.
And that is
What happens when you don't have a
when you don't have
Moral center.
leadership?
a moral
You don't have
center,
a
when you don't
moral
have
center.
when you don't have
Responsibility is
stable
God.
leadership,
Yeah.
when you don't have
God.
God. And so that's the sort of the bookends of this
But
this
the
final
king is
story.
not God.
I think in this story it is.
Oh,
I think it's what it refers to in this story.
I think it can be both.
yeah.
So this leading into sort of the rest of
For me, it
Tanakh,
is.
like the next book, Shmuel talks about the beginning of the institution of kingship, where it ends up being Shaul from the tribe of
Hardly, yeah.
Benjamin,
Set up. So set up.
who ends up being the first king.
So
And there's actually some very interesting connections there between Benjamin and Yavesh Gilad, which is fascinating if you think about here and the relationships between them. But in the beginning of Shoftim, it seemed to be presenting this image of this theocratic anarchy of like, yeah, this is how it is. The people do good, the people do bad,
Why
we mess
theocratic?
up.
Why not
Because
just anarchy? Where's the theocrat?
because it's God who raises up the heroes.
Yeah,
And the
bad
heroes
stuff,
arise when the people return to God, when they recognize God's leadership,
Right, but in time,
rulership.
but in the times of anarchy, there's no.
Well,
Every foundation.
theocratic anarchy in the sense that there isn't a stable government. It's not a theocracy in the sense that like the Kohanim are running everything. It's theocratic in the sense that the only true rulership and leadership and authority belongs to God.
Right.
And so when the people don't recognize that,
Right.
then the enemies come and they have all these problems. When they do recognize that, they get a leader, a fighter, a judge, like Ehud and Devorah and Barak and Gidon, who rescue them. For a while it's good, but then they slip again, and we go through the cycle over and over.
But again, the judges judge on the standard of God. They don't
Right.
judge on their own standard. There's a standard, and
Right.
that's the standard set forth by God.
Yeah.
It's not their opinion. It's God's standard. So
Right.
once that,
Although
one-
sometimes they also made mistakes, like
Yeah, well,
when
they made
Gidon
mistakes, but those were
when
mistakes,
Gidon
right.
made his ephod, and the
Right.
people started
those are
using it
mistakes,
as an
though.
idol.
Right. But okay, this is
Right.
actually very good.
And now at the end, we
Yeah.
see things starting to fall apart, where
Yeah.
that system, which maybe had a certain kind of homeostasis in its cycle, it starts falling apart. Things get so bad, the lack of leadership, the lack of recognition of God's kingship in the way that you're presenting it, becomes so missing, so lacking, that everything just starts falling apart. And we see as the stories are arranged that it goes from these hero stories about Devorah and Ehud to Gideon, who's unsure of himself, but he rises to the occasion, to Yiftach, who encounters some very similar challenges to Gideon, and where Gideon makes the right decision, Yiftach makes the wrong decision, to Shimshon, who isn't a leader in any way whatsoever, somehow achieves positive results, but is constantly doing things that just seem like not where he should be going, not what he should be doing, until these ending stories where all of society just seems to be falling apart. They're fighting each other, they're killing each other, they're lacking in empathy and care and justice, even within family units. And then to the level of the tribe, then to the level of the nation. And so it ends by saying, listen, this is what happens when we're all just doing our own thing,
Right.
caring about this is my tribe, I'll care about us, let you deal with your problem. And then it's just sort of looking forwards towards this image of kingship, of unity, of stable rule, ultimately led by God and Torah. And so while we can't say that the book has a happy ending, it definitely has a message.
Definitely is a message. Wow.
So this is a guide to would-be racists, would-be rapists.
Nah.
Well, ultimately, it's again, somebody who's capable of doing that is void of morality.
Yeah.
And then we could have a discussion about it, but you can keep extrapolating that to where does morality ultimately come from.
David did it with Bathsheba,
And he was wrong.
and he was a king.
And he right.
But we
Right.
don't
So
know-
actually, that's actually the turning
And God wasn't happy about
and
it.
that's the turning point in that book,
And God wasn't happy
Yeah.
about it.
where kingship starts to fall apart
Right.
itself.
Right. Because
Because
he went.
each system seems to work for a while, but we're human. And people make mistakes. And once people make mistakes, whether naturally or karmically or by divine judgment, consequences happen.
People, but when it's a slow boiling of the frog and it goes over generation over generation over generation, by the time you're at the last generation, there's no more thought to it. There's no more tshuva. There's no more guilt. It's a way of life, and that's where it really becomes morally void. Do you follow what I'm saying?
I think so. I'm just trying.
And
Is that how you're presenting how this happens?
I think this
through
is
that kind
this-
of
this story here.
slow
This
development.
story here is like the ultimate,
But that's the
And-
book of Shoftim.
and then we see it
That's
again.
Yeah.
exactly what he's saying, the slow boiling of the frog is the book of Shoftim.
And then we see it again with David to Solomon to the separation of Israel and Judah, and then it happens all over again.
Right.
It
But
still is.
things are always
Absolutely.
sometimes they get better, sometimes they get worse.
We have
But
our
I think-
circle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have the circle, and
Right, pain. If the pain
It's the
gets
circle of life.
So where are we at now in the circle?
Let's
discussion for a whole
yeah, that's a whole
other
different discussion. Okay. Well,
Oh man. Actually, at first I did not like the story. It was not.
Okay.
I wasn't resonating, but it really brought everything together.
oh,
In the end. It
I'm glad.
really did.
Okay, so before
For
you
me,
do
it
the
did.
machine,
It
I'll just
really
give
brought
you
it together.
applause.
I like it.
oh.
Let's go.
Thank you.
Really.
Thank you, everybody.
Great course. Really good.
Yeah, no, it was,
I'm glad.
it was